So it's a collective action problem in Davao Gulf. They know that they have this overarching problem, but acting separately, they did not focus on that overarching problem. If they did, if people decided and the municipalities decided to all together restrain fishing, then new kinds of challenges would come into consideration. Pag uurong ka sa fisheries, ano yung uurungan mo? Siguro, urungan mo, coconut. Coconut sector, because most of the fisher folk here in the country are also coconut planters, no? Especially in Davao Gulf. Unfortunately, BIFAR and the PCA, although they're in the same building, seem not to have a recognition that they're serving the same constituency in many places. And Davao Gulf is not an example, is an example of that. Perhaps if they decided na uurong sila from the fisheries sector, they'd think now, dapat mag-participatory value chain analysis tayo para yung mga mangingisda pwedeng beyond copra, they can do copra that's of a high standard dahil bibilhin para sa market sa Europe, no? Sa ngayon hindi tayo makapasok sa feeds market sa Europe, no? Siguro yung scale ng coco coir, yung 5,000 nuts per day na kailangan ng coco coir machines natin, poproblemahin nila yon, no? But these kinds of problems, these kinds of questions are not yet the questions that our stakeholders in Davao Gulf are asking. Yet these are the constituencies of social enterprises. So, to my mind, based on our discussions at NAPC, it may be important to have a territorial approach, especially in those places where the ecosystem is the major resource for poverty reduction. When you have a territorial approach and you talk of the problem not just per municipality or per subsector, then the other stakeholders to making a viable ecosystem for social enterprises comes to the fore, no? So yun po yung isang konsepto na gusto namin i-request ang coalition na pag-isipan. Pwede bang merong geographical focus at ecosystem focus ang ating pag-iisip dito? Sapagkat kung wala, baka maging ala Davao Gulf. Kung inisip po nila halimbawa na sige, fisheries, tapos bigyan natin ng pahinga, uurong tayo sa coconut, sasama tayo sa value chain, sa tourism. You know, may tourist bus na nakasakay sa Roro. Kapag ganun po siguro mag-isip, no, maybe sa bottom-up planning and budgeting, ang mga kasama natin on the ground, nagdesisyon na ang priority natin ay yung common facilities that are needed for the viability of social enterprises. But that did not happen yet, no? So ngayon po sa next round ng bottom-up planning and budgeting, we're hoping to convene a Gulf-wide discussion. You know, they already have their framework plan, but we'd like to work with them to have a joint outcomes planning, a long list of investments that could support yung pag-urong sa coconut para kapag magba-bottom-up planning and budgeting sa bawat munisipyo, yun po ang reference point nilang lahat. Yung overarching problem nila and the sets of solutions that they already have agreed upon. To our mind, this will help generate resources, not just from bottom-up planning and budgeting, but also this will provide the platform for the convergent investments of PCA and BIFAR, for instance. So we've been studying how the social enterprises can help poor farmers. As you must all know, many of our artisan fisher folk and our poor farmers are smallholders. Yet if you want to tap urban markets, you'd want scale, you'd want product standards, etc. It's in that nexus that separates the smallholders from being a provider for the urban markets, where we see a lot of innovation and collaboration missing. Okay. There's that gap between what the coconut husks that can be converted into peat and fiber and the requirements of the big buyers. Right now, there's big buyers. So we've been studying experiences such as one documented by Alex Buenaventura of One Network Bank, where working with the land bank, working with corporate foundation, they provided the initial capital that would create a company that would aggregate the inputs of many smallholders in different crops, that would specify the standards that would ensure that the volume is of a minimum level. So we know that there is such, it's possible to succeed in these kinds of enterprises, but there's not just enough of these kinds of initiatives happening. Next slide, please. So what might social enterprises do? What kind of role might social enterprises have in a setting like Davao Gulf? I've listed a couple of things here in the lower part. First, aside from the subsector mapping, there could be a mapping of market opportunities. Second, we're talking of 14 poor municipalities in Davao Gulf. So maybe it might make sense to develop business model templates that can be customized by each locality. And then maybe the social enterprises, because they know the business model, can help identify what common facilities would be necessary for the viability of coconut enterprises or tourism enterprises, for instance. And then social enterprise groups can also work with NAPC, for instance, in building the grassroots organizational capacity, the internal capacity, dapat may maayos na audit, and then the capacity to link up with each other so that they can work in a federated way to achieve the scale economies that are needed. And then lastly, and this might be interesting to DTI, we know that DTI is proposing a leverage fund that would support small and medium-scale enterprises. We're proposing to DTI that they also work with small farmers and fisherfolk, especially in the coconut sector and in the fisheries sector. So ano po ang pwedeng design dyan? Pwede kaya na kapag merong leverage fund, which is, it's a recoverable loan, no? It's something in between equity and a loan. Pwede bang ang mode of distributing, of making available a 2 billion fund from DTI would be one where parang equity yan sa small and medium enterprise that will partner with grassroots smallholders. Tapos yung social enterprise ang agent ng DTI. So that merong nagbabantay kung yung bottom line na equity, bottom line na environmental protection, isang constraint na nirerespeto ng small and medium-scale enterprises. So there are these existing opportunities na po, no? There are resources from bottom-up planning and budgeting. It may be important where ecosystems are important. It may be important to have an overarching frame so that the priorities are set in a narrative of addressing problems in the large rather than problems in the micro. There are funds that are being made available for capacity building. There's an empowerment fund. There are funds for capitalization that are being made available. Pero yung governance arrangements, hindi pa natin naiimbento the organizational forms that would make it meaningful for and defensible for an agency like DTI or for the PCFC to download funds to viable enterprises. As we know, it's very easy for these fund approaches to degenerate into crony capitalism. That's not too recent. Or to degenerate into PPP deals, not too recent also, that end up just with overpriced facilities that cannot be sustained. So there's a governance mechanism that needs to be set up. And we're also thinking about this governance mechanism in the context of Davao Gulf. Siguro yung maglalagay ng resources, yun ang kasama sa governance. Definitely kasama sa governance yung coconut farmers. We've been looking at business models wherein the equity of farmers would be 1,000 coconuts delivered as operating capital to the enterprise over a year or two. But before they're able to complete the 1,000 coconuts per year, they'd need strong cash flow support from venture capital. They'd need common facilities, etc. So, sa konsepto pong iniisip namin, merong territorial governance approach. Constituted territorial approach in governance, in governing these initiatives that draw from different resources at kasama yung iba't ibang mga contributors doon sa governance approach na yun. So a territorial alliance, maybe, if you'd like to call it that, that is more than just the jurisdictional sets, the mayors and governors that we have. We'd like social enterprises to be there. We'd like governors and mayors to be there. We'd like national agencies to play a part in there. Maybe with NEDA being the bastonero. So that yung mga MFOs ng mga ahensya ay tumutugma sa gusto at kailangan ng territorial alliance. So sa ngayon po, since this is what we've reached in terms of conceptualizing the work. I'm presenting this to you kasi if you have criticisms, if you have recommendations, then we'd like to be hearing this. And we think this is a generic situation. Kasi archipelago tayo. Tapos sabi nga ni Congressman Tañada, fisheries and coconut, yung mga constituencies ng social enterprises na importanteng may pasok natin sa ating initiative. Maraming salamat po.